Alright, it is time to talk about the tactical class in patch 7.2 Space Marine 2, his best perks, his best setups, and why he is currently the strongest class in the game, in my opinion. Now, the tactical really is blessed with just a tremendous amount of amazing perks. I'm going to go through them here first and then talk about his weapon combinations, because really the tactical is just blessed with options. That is the biggest thing about him. He has the largest number of primaries in the whole game. All of these are currently viable, and even like the weakest one here with the auto bolt rifle is still totally viable at the moment, which is pretty crazy to say because this thing used to be trash. Now, the plasma is, in my opinion, the strongest weapon for him currently, and the bolt carbine is like the only one that's really in competition for the plasma, but we'll get into these in a second here because first I want to talk about the perks. So we're going to start here with balanced distribution. Your primary weapon deals 10% more damage, but your secondary weapon deals 10% less damage. On this class, you use your primary a lot because you pretty much have infinite ammo with Emperor's Vengeance, or even now, if you're taking other perks, you still have things like Skilled Supplier for more ammunition. So really, you're just going to be spamming your primary shots pretty much all the time, and 10% less on your secondary weapon. I've never really felt this make like a huge difference at all. In fact, I hardly notice it whatsoever. And really, the only thing this might really affect, because if you're taking plasma, you're already taking a different perk anyways. We'll get into that in a second. But the heavy bolt pistol, this is pretty much what everybody's using now, and this one already does so much damage on headshots that you hardly notice a 10% decrease whatsoever, and the bolt pistol's kind of been power creeped, so people don't really touch this anyways. Now, the next perk here would be Plasma Boost. When plasma weapons are 30% overheated, their damage increases by 40%, and their charged shots use 1 less energy. This is just the perk you take when you're using plasma guns, and it's kind of lame. It only works for 2 guns, but hey, that's your primary and your secondary here, and that's really all you need it to be, because this just says you do more damage and you use less ammo, and that's really all you need a perk to do for your guns. So pretty much always take this if you're using plasma. This definitely dramatically increases your damage, and plasma tactical is really strong right now because of this perk on top of some of the reworked perks for plasma. And double plasma attack, it's just damn good. So Kraken Penetrator Rounds is the next perk on our list here. Bolt weapons penetrate 1 more enemy. I don't think this perk is really valuable at all. I've tried this out a lot. I've used it on pretty much every bolt gun he has, and I've never really seen a serious difference using this. It just doesn't really do anything, and most of the weapons you would use with it, like the heavy bolt rifle, they already have an excellent penetration value, and really this only makes like a very minor benefit sometimes against like a huge swarm of Minoras, so it's just not super useful. But what is super useful is Heightened Vigor. After a perfectly timed parry, block, or dodge, you deal 10% more melee and gun strike damage. You do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back for 10 seconds. This is pretty much the best version of a no knockback parry in the entire game, because you get more damage on top of not getting knocked back to deal that damage, and no knockback effects in this game are super valuable. Not getting knocked over is just amazing, because a lot of the things in this game that kill you, it's because they stun lock you or they knock you over when you're trying to do something to kill them, especially with things like Sword Warriors. So I pretty much always take this on him. Alternatively, you could take something like Relentless Pursuit. After a gun strike, range damage increases by 25% for 5 seconds. This isn't like an amazing perk anymore because, first of all, a lot of people move off of the plasma, the fencing weapons, over to block weapons because this class is best with the block chainsword. But if you're really interested in using a fencing weapon and you want a 25% range damage increase on top of it instead of a knockback resist, you can use this perk. 25% is a pretty massive bonus, and I do think this perk is over versatility. After switching weapons, your secondary weapon deals 25% more damage. The effect lasts until reloading or switching back to your primary weapon. This class doesn't really use its secondary remotely as much as other classes, and this perk already isn't super valuable, especially compared to these two. So I would just take either Heightened Vigor or Relentless Pursuit based on your personal playstyle. Now, the next thing I would talk about would be Final Shot, because this perk I have slept on before, but I do think it is pretty good. After a finisher, the equipped ranged weapon reloads automatically. This is primarily amazing on the bolt carbine, because the bolt carbine ammo variant already has a tremendous amount of ammo, especially if we take it with things like Skilled Supplier for an extra increase of 15%, and on top of the fact that the extra spread reduction here, or I should say the increased spread on the 2 accuracy accuracy here. It doesn't really matter for us at all when we have hone precision. Equip weapons maximum spread decreases by 50% when firing without aiming. This pretty much turns your hip fire into a laser beam, and it's actually more accurate than just shooting your gun manually or like manually aiming. So I pretty much always take this if you're using the tactical, and tactical can pretty much just go down this tree for the bolt carbine while using the actual final shot perk, because you don't need things like gun strike reload, because again, you're just going to be cycling this with executes. The next perk here is Steady Aim. Weapon spread and recoil are reduced by 20%, and range damage against terminus level enemies is increased by 10%. This isn't a super valuable perk. Weapon spread and recoil aren't like totally non-issues in this game, but they don't matter that much, especially when we can take things like accuracy variance with Emperor's Vengeance and have infinite ammo anyways. So Steady Aim, not super good. I wish they would actually buff this perk quite a bit. And terminus damage increased by 10% isn't bad. It's just we're on a class with Auspex scan and battle focus, and we already nuke bosses faster than any other class anyways. Now, Emperor's Vengeance, killing a Majoris level or higher enemy restores your primary weapon's ammo by 1 magazine, cannot exceed maximum ammo capacity, cooldown is 30 seconds. This is still one of the strongest perks in the entire game. It just says you have infinite ammo with your primary weapon, and that's really all you needed to say. And especially with things like Skilled Supplier, you will pretty much never run out of ammo, even in a true solo with increased spawns now, if you have Emperor's Vengeance. It is just that good. Now, as far as team perks are concerned, Communion of Fire, recoil is reduced by 25%, and ranged damage against extremis level enemies is increased by 10% for all squad members. This is probably the worst team perk here by far, in my opinion. The recoil reduction just doesn't matter that much, and a ranged damage increase of 10% to only extremis. Like, that's just not that useful in this game, unfortunately. Honestly, if this just said, like, Majoris and Extremis, that would be fine, because this one is already, like, 15% for ranged damage, period, against everything. And I know they didn't want to make it, like, redundant here by having Communion of Fire do the same thing, but, like, they reduced the bonus to, like, 5% and made, like, the recoil reduction, like, up on top of another benefit. It might be worth taking over Aligned Aim, which I think is currently the best perk here, because the only competition would be Transhuman Physiology. All squad members restore 30% more contested health from range damage. This isn't a bad perk. This is actually pretty useful, because a lot of times the thing you actually get your contested HP back from is your ranged weapon, and this just makes that much better. But Aligned Aim, range damage increases by 15% for all squad members is just too good to pass up, in my opinion. And things like the Bolt Carbine and Plasma, they already don't really suffer at all from, like, a lack of contested HP recovery, because for some reason in this game, ranged weapons have, like, disproportionately high contested health recovery for the most part, except for, like, Neo Volkite Pistol. So Transhuman Physiology can be redundant in some cases, but it's still a useful perk. Now, as far as gear perks are concerned, Vital Data, scanning an extremis or terminus level enemy restores Auspex scans charged by 50%. This is not a terrible perk by any means. It's just not as good as priority targeting, because 50% reduction is good. It's just priority targeting lets our Auspex last longer and also buffs our battle focus perk, which is the best perk in this game, in my opinion. So priority targeting, the mark from Auspex scan lasts 8 seconds longer, base 8, but Auspex scan ignores Minoris level enemies. The negative of this perk doesn't really matter, because Minoris enemies are already super easy to kill in the first place, and, like, you're never going to be shooting a Minoris horde with your Auspex scan, like, unless it's on accident or it's, like, inside of, like, an entire Majoris group. So it's just not that useful. Now, what's really not useful is target lock. Enemies marked by Auspex scan take 75% more equipment damage. Now, when it comes to equipment damage buffs in this game, a 20% buff is all it takes to get, like, crack grenades up to a one-shot, but the fact you have to have them on Auspex scan is already terrible, and really a crack grenade buff for, like, an actual breakpoint is pretty awful on its own, and Melt-A-Bombs already one-shot everything anyways, and shock grenades already kill the things you'd want them to do, or you'd want them to kill in the first place, or they slow down Majoris or Extremis, and things like frag grenades are already pretty mediocre, and you swap them out to begin with. Now, Battle Focus, a perfectly timed parry or block gives the parried enemy a mark from Auspex scan. This is the best perk in this game. This one also benefits from all other Auspex scan buffs we have with things like priority targeting and concentrated fire. This just lets you parry and nuke down whatever is in front of you. It is so exceptionally good that, like, really this class could handle, like, 10 times the amount of current enemies in the game, because he is just that strong. Now, improved efficiency. Scanning any 10 enemies or 3 Majoris level or higher enemies with 1 Auspex scan restores Majora's equipment charge by 1. This is actually pretty good. This would be even better if you like paired it with Vital Data. It's just unfortunate that his equipment recharge is tied to the same tree as Battle Focus, and if you're like trying to use a meta build and you're trying to use like the strongest thing possible, and you're trying to just like mess around, there is no point you would ever take improved efficiency over Battle Focus. And the same goes for Precise Calibration. Enemies marked by Auspex Scan take an additional 75% damage, but Auspex Scan's radius is reduced by 25%. Damage bonuses to Auspex are good, but Battle Focus is just better, especially when like Battle Focus benefits the most from damage bonuses from Auspex. And now that takes us to things like close targeting. When Auspex Scan is in cooldown, melee damage increases by 25%. This is a pretty good perk, and I would use this if I wasn't using Battle Focus, and like I actually do kind of like the melee damage increase here. 25% is pretty hefty, especially on things like a blockchain sword, and especially this one. Yeah, the speed version of the block is better, by the way. A lot of people ask me this. It's because the way block works is on your first perfect block, you get a 30% damage increase, and then the next one gives you a 90%, and then those buffs on the actual Adrenaline Rush hit from 2 charges will stay for like a second after, and this lets you get more heavy hits in, which comes out to greater overall damage, and it still chews through Minoris and like Majora's on its own, especially with the breakpoints of Battle Focus that already allow us to one-shot Majora's with like a bash and the combo skip in the first place. Which takes us to things like Expert Timing. Enemies scanned marked by Auspex Scan take an additional 75% damage, but the mark's duration is reduced by 4 seconds, base 8. I used to use this a lot more than I do now because I think Concentrated Fire is more valuable, and this one is Auspex Scan Zone lasts 60% longer, and enemies marked by Auspex Scan take an additional 120% damage, but they lose the mark when they leave the scanned area. When you are using Battle Focus, you hardly really need your actual Auspex Scan to begin with, and Battle Focus is just that strong, and getting an additional 120% damage buff to Battle Focus, which really comes out like with the actual base Auspex Scan damage bonus, it comes out to like 200% damage bonus increase pretty much all the time with Battle Focus on whatever is in front of you. So Concentrated Fire, super valuable. I will say, if you are using the Prestige perk of Second Look, it doesn't really benefit at all from Concentrated Fire, which is kind of unfortunate. Or maybe it's kind of beneficial because you can then take things like Skilled Supplier, Resilience, and Fortitude and Acuity all together and really have no downside to using those because these two aren't very valuable. Now, as far as these signature perks go, Signal Jammer. Enemies marked by Auspex Scan cannot call for reinforcements and automatically explode upon attempting to do so. They did buff this thing with like the whole explode portion, but like it's still the worst signature perk by far. You pretty much never use this. It's a really bad perk, and as far as I'm concerned, I think they should just rework this perk entirely because there's no real way to make like a use of Auspex Scan to stop reinforcement good in this game. Now, what is good is Radiating Impact. A melee finisher additionally deals significant area of effect damage in a 10-meter radius. Cooldown is 90 seconds. This perk is deceptively good. I think this is the best signature perk, and this thing regularly overperforms, and it scales much higher than Marked for Death, which is a headshot will instantly kill a Majora's or Extremis level enemy marked by Auspex Scan. Cooldown is 120 seconds. This isn't a bad perk, it's just not as valuable in the higher difficulties as Radiating Impact is, and this would primarily be used against things like a Zoanthrope, but like on this class, you already delete Zoanthrope so easily on its own, and Radiating Impact will pretty much body entire hordes at times. Like, you will see this thing demolish whole Majora's packs, whole Extremis packs if they're all around you, and it's kind of just like a crazy perk, to be honest. I'm surprised they haven't nerfed it yet, and its cooldown being 90 seconds is pretty short, to be honest. I'm pretty sure they buffed this at one point, and Marked for Death is still definitely an option. It's just, I don't think it's as valuable as Radiating Impact, and Radiating Impact really is just kind of cracked, to be honest. Now, as far as the Prestige perks go, Acuity, each consecutive headshot increases headshot by 3% up to 15%. The bonus lasts 5 seconds without a headshot. This is the best perk here by far, though this does not benefit the Plasma Gun in any way because the Plasma Gun does not get any headshot modifiers, so just keep that in mind. Now, Ammo Reserve increases by 15% with Skilled Supplier. More ammo is good. This is also pretty beneficial if you're using things like Final Shot. Second Look, if no enemy has been scanned by the time the Auspex Scan Zone disappears, Auspex Scan's charge is restored. This is also pretty decent. It's just not useful at all if you're using Concentrated Fire because, like, you know, this just means you always have your Auspex up if you're not using that perk. So I used to not like this perk. I think it's not too bad. Not incredible, but, you know, it does its thing. Now, spare power, collecting an ammo box restores ability charge by 25%. These like little pickup perks are always pretty trash, and again, battle focus is more important than our actual Auspex anyways, and things like resilience with 40% more health off Medicae stims. This just means we live, and like this class doesn't really have a ton of HP regen or like survivability perks in the first place, so having like a little stim perk is super useful for him. Same thing with fortitude, health increases by 15%. This is pretty much like a mandatory pick on every class that has it because health in this game is super valuable. Now, exigency charge, when your health is less than 25%, ability charge generates 15% faster, is just trash. Same thing with these. These two are just trash. It's unfortunate, but it's just how it is. Now it is time to talk about his weapons, and primarily the Plasma Incinerator, because I do think Plasma is the best build on this guy currently, and that's really what I want to cover here. So of the 4 variants of venting speed, good old ammo capacity, firepower, and our glorious rate of fire, I believe rate of fire is the best variant, mainly because of the way contested HP works in this game, just how the Plasma functions, and that your charge shots are the most important thing on this weapon. And there used to be 2 nodes of perpetual velocity for shots charged 15% faster. Now there was only 1, so rate of fire is that much more valuable on this thing. And really, this lets you get back your contested HP a lot faster, even if you have to dodge, especially against chaos where you're constantly dodging range fire and things like that. So I just think this is really, really valuable. And the way I would set it up would be pretty much go down the blast radius tree, because common shot generating 10% less heat. Common shots on this thing kind of suck. They're really only useful against things like Hormigons that have like an innate extra damage on them from plasma shots, but even then it's just not all that useful. This thing is pretty ammo efficient now when we go down this tree for like rampage and efficient charge shots from this plasma weapon use 2 less energy. There's another note of that now over here for another efficient charge. So if you take both of these, that's 4 less. If you take the plasma perk, which you definitely will be, that is 5 less. So like this thing comes out to like, I believe it's using 5 shots or like 5 energy per charge shot, which is really, really good on this gun. And overall, the plasma is just in a really good spot right now. The only things I would really change around would be like whether or not you want to use something like adamant adamant velocity, or something like adamant restoration, which is when your health drops below 30%, your ammo reserve is restored by 25% of the maximum capacity. This isn't super useful on us because usually when you're using plasma, you're almost always going to be taking Emperor's Vengeance, because this weapon doesn't benefit at all from recoil and spread reduction, and it also doesn't benefit at all from being automatically reloaded. So you're pretty much never running out of ammo with the Plasma Incinerator because of these 2 nodes anyways, and he's already just a super ammo efficient class to begin with. And fast venting, weapons cool 15% faster, perpetual velocity, perfect radius. After your perfect time dodge, the damage radius of charge shot increases by 10% for 10 seconds. This is not as valuable as retaliation, which is after a perfectly timed dodge, you deal 25% more damage for 10 seconds, but this is definitely far more valuable than adamant restoration by giving us extra charge shot when we are below 30% HP, because charge shot increases are pretty hard to come by in this. And these 2 nodes here, the weapon cools 15% faster, charge shots generate 10% more heat. I mean, this doesn't really affect us on rate of fire because you still get 3 shots off regardless of whether or not you have this on, but this can affect things like the venting version, wherever that is, right here. This will affect the venting version a little bit, if I remember correctly. It's like it gets you 1 less shot, but overall, the venting version is kind of okay. It does let you get like more shots off to begin with, but it's just the charge rate's too slow, in my opinion. Now, as far as common efficiency goes, common shots generate 20% less heat, shots charge 20% slower. This is a terrible perk because charge shots are just the best thing on this perk tree, on this weapon to begin with, so it just doesn't do a whole lot for us. And now I want to move into the actual plasma pistol for a second, because the plasma pistol, I would pretty much just take either the good old rate of fire here too, because we don't really need the extra ammo capacity like say the bulwark or assault would, because we're a tactical, we're shooting our primary weapon far more than our secondary, and this does benefit from all the benefits of the plasma perks as well. Now if you do take the venting version, I do want to say that charge cooling, charge shots generate 10% less heat. This is totally trash and worthless on all the other versions of this weapon, but this will also let you shoot like 9 shots with the venting plasma version. It gets you like a whole extra charge shot, but I don't really know why you would ever need to shoot 9 charge shots with a plasma pistol, because that's pretty much all your ammo on this gun. But I mean, hey, if you want to shoot 9 charge shots, this is how you do it. You just take these perks and you go blasting. But as far as like the actual setups would go, for most of them, if you're not taking the venting version, I would just do something like this, because I just think energy, even on the secondary for tactical, and especially if you're on like bulwark or assault, I would just take something like this. And I think this is the best setup for plasma pistol currently, even though I don't think this 10% damage increase actually gives us any actual like break points. But either way, if you take these energy reserves, you're going to be going down into a 10% eventually. So that's pretty much all I have to say on the actual perk trees and best weapon setup. As far as the chain swords go, or like combat knife's not bad. Chain sword's just better, and the artificer block chain sword is the best version on here. And even if I was taking a fencing version, I would always set it up this way, because full throttle is kind of mandatory if you're trying to play a meta build on this, because the combo skip is very important. I do have a video on that as well. And as far as other options go, that's pretty much it. I don't think the block version of the relic one's all that great. It's pretty slow. Really speed with chain swords is all you want. And as far as like combat knife goes, again, block combat knife, definitely the best combat knife. Fastest speed. Balance one, you know, is not that bad. I think the balance one's actually over the fencing one in this case, but still. Block knives, so block weapons in this game are just better than fencing currently. And that's really all I have to say on the tactical class for his best build. I would set it up like this with the plasma incinerator, the plasma pistol, and then your block chain sword. Or alternatively, your fencing chain sword if you really want to use that, because this guy can kind of get away with just spamming range even all by himself. And as far as the perk trees go, I would take something like this. I think this is the best current perk setup for him. You should probably swap out QED for something like, I don't know, maybe not second look, but something like skill supplier, resilience, fortitude, and then you can pick one of these two perks if you really have to. But I usually just leave a QED on because I don't feel like spending my extra points, and also these two perks suck. But that is all I have to say for the tactical class and his perk tree and best prestige perk setups on top of his best plasma setups. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I also want to say thank you to all my channel members who help this channel grow. Your support is much appreciated. And as always, take it easy, guys. Peace.